Rachel and friends and members of Reprieve Australia, it's with great emotion that I take the opportunity to respond on behalf of the honorees. I was particularly struck when Michael Kirby was talking about the intervention of the High Court in the Tate case back in 1962, because I remember that event very strongly, because I was actually there in court when it happened. And if I could just quote from a recent book. I was in the High Court for the hearing. Sir Owen Dixon, Chief Justice, asked counsel for the Victorian Government, Sir Henry Winnicky, for an undertaking that the court would be given time to consider the application. That was for a reprieve. The Supreme Court had found that the matter of Tate's execution was now entirely in Cabinet's hands. On the question of the High Court's jurisdiction, Sir Owen Dixon said in words I will never forget, "The difficulty as to jurisdiction simply does not exist. I've never had any doubt that the incidental power of the court can preserve any subject matter, human or not, pending a decision." And so the result was that the unfortunate Solicitor General had to then give an undertaking that he would tell his masters that the court had intervened and that the execution couldn't proceed. So the court, as he said, then granted an adjournment so that the authority of the court may be maintained. And issued an order staying the execution. It was, as I said, a heart-stopping moment. Faced with further embarrassing delays, Cabinet then commuted Tate's death sentence, and of course he was certified insane. As I keep telling people, the arguments for the abolition of the death penalty go back a very long way, and I just want to share a couple of observations with you. Back in the 16th century, Michel de Montaigne, in his essay on physiognomy, set out his reasons for opposing the death sentence. Judgments normally inflame themselves towards revenge out of horror for the crime. That is precisely what tempers mine. My horror for the first murder makes me frightened of committing a second, and my loathing for the original act of cruelty makes me loath to imitate it. In the 18th century, the pioneer economist Cesare Beccaria, a Milanese, argued with classic simplicity that there's no demonstrable correlation between the severity of punishment and the crime rate. All punishment deters, but there's no statistical evidence that execution or torture deters uniquely. There's a critical point in punishment beyond which the increasing severity is excessive because it has no demonstrable influence on the crime rate. And Beccaria argued, clemency ought to shine in the code and not in private judgment. If I can prove that the death penalty is neither necessary nor useful, I shall have achieved the triumph of mankind. In 1857, Tolstoy, then in Paris, saw a guillotine, and the image haunted him all his life. And he wrote, "I witnessed many atrocities in the war and in the Caucasus, but I should have been less sickened to see a man torn to pieces before my eyes than I was by this perfected, elegant machine, by means of which a strong, clean, healthy man was killed in an instant. In the first case, there is no reasoning will, but a paroxysm of human passion. In the second, coolness to the point of refinement, homicide with comfort, nothing big. When I saw the head part from the body, and each of them fall separately into a box with a thud, I understood, not in my mind, but with my whole being, that no rational doctrine of progress could justify that act, and that if every man now living in the world, and every man who had lived since the beginning of time, were to maintain in the name of some theory or other that this execution was indispensable, I should still know that it was not indispensable, that it was wrong. The Canadian philosopher Ronald Wright argues states arrogate to themselves the power of coercive violence, the right to crack the whip, execute prisoners, send young men to the battlefield. From this stems what J.M. Coetzee has called the black flower of civilization: torture, wrongful imprisonment, violence for display, the forging of might into right. States employ various styles of human sacrifice as forms of the ultimate political theatre.